No?
Sure.
No? Alright, so let's start the discussion today. Today our discussion will be about how gender roles affect women's success in society. So let's on to the first topic.
All right. So the first topic is women involvement in the workforce. So, in one of my sources from Trends magazine, it talks about how upwards of 50% or even more of women are involved in the workforce.
Yeah.
So, what do you guys think about this?
So I think it's pretty good because like I feel like in like a general sense like it's just like increasing the market economy, you know what I'm saying? And like I think it's good because like breaking away from the specific roles like gender roles from back then there's like basically progressing our society forward. Like now like back then a woman would be like, oh, even if she has like lots of dreams and aspirations, right, to be like a whatever it is, like an astronaut, a nurse, a doctor, you know, back then they'd be like, okay, no, you can't do that. But today, look at them, you know, there's so much like woman involvement in different jobs that used to be men dominant and men overpowered. And I feel like in the end it's just progressing our society forward into a more accepting and tolerant society. So what do you think?
So for these certain types of jobs, do you think that women perform just as well as men or even beyond men?
I think they're pretty successful. Like
I don't like.
I feel like success is like a perception thing, right? And I feel like it'll only increase like through time. Like you can say the same thing for anyone though, right? Like if like someone is like in a like an unfortunate situation, like what you were saying, like an impoverished neighborhood or whatever, like if they grew up there, they're gonna have like a lower chance of getting into like a higher, more successful field, right? Than somebody like who lives in a nicer town with more resources, right? You can say the same thing for women. Like it just depends on where they're from. I wouldn't necessarily say that like it depends on the job they're working or whatever. It really just depends like on a person's grit, their drive, and like what they're willing to do to be better, pretty much. Because back then, you could make the argument back then, right? Because back then, no matter how hard they worked, they just weren't allowed to do certain jobs. But look at today, everybody can do anything, you know. So it's not like oh, even though it might be today, still today, it might be a little harder for women to get certain jobs. I feel like honestly, they can do pretty much anything. You usually see women working in construction, usually them being astronauts, doctors, nurses. I feel like there's nothing they can't really do today. I feel like they're successful at anything. It just depends on the person specifically. I won't say like a certain entire group is unsuccessful or successful. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So looking at it from another perspective, is that even if you see women in the workforce, you could say that's like women are not adhering to gender roles because they're like in the workforce, but the thing is that in modern times, most people are in the workforce, like no matter what.
Yeah.
So even if women are still in the workforce, and even if like they're still being a mother, they can still adhere to gender roles as like being a mother while still having a job.
Yeah.
Even after having kids.
Like especially like if someone is like in like a single mother family, right? You're not just gonna like adhere to gender roles to the maximum and like leave your kids starving. You know what I mean? But I feel like also, do you think like certain gender roles are bad? Like when you say like, oh, they work in the thing, but like then they come home and they cook for the children and like they do certain stuff for their children, is that like necessarily like a bad thing? Like, you know
well,
what
I feel like gender roles is just how society naturally kind of forms, like human relation, just kind of how it works. And but the thing is, since we've gone to like modern times, like we aren't like we're not like struggling for food or anything, so it's like these societal structures they're not as important because it's not like necessary for survival.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a new thing to try to like break away from this, and in like a sense I understand, but like it's not like a forced thing anymore. You know what I'm saying? It's not like the woman has to cook. Like if a man wants to cook, then the man cooks. But if a woman wants to cook, then the woman, you know what I'm saying, she cooks. Yeah. It's not like if a woman wants to work, then go work. You know, it's so like even if you are a stay-at-home mom or whatever, it's not like you're really adhering to gender roles. You're just basically doing what's best for you. Yeah. Unlike back then, where even if you want to work, you can't. It's not like you're forced to. It's literally just whatever position you're in and whatever you feel like are aspiring to do, I think.
Yeah. So another topic that came up in some of my sources is that it talks about how following gender roles can lead people to be like intolerant of other ideas or like lifestyles. So
like example of that maybe would be like a stay-at-home dad lifestyle. Like when people are so used to, oh yeah, the mom's gonna raise the kids. When a dad stays home and raises the kids, they're like, oh, what's this guy doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
like,
kind of
like
just
that.
like unnecessary. Like it's just not helpful for the success of people in general.
Yeah.
People are just like kind of being
Not open-minded.
yeah, not open-minded about how people are living their lives.
Yeah. Also like intolerant, like as in like even if your like wife or whatever wants to work, you're not allowing her pretty much because you're intolerant of her being anything else but a stay-at-home mom, kind of like that. Yeah.
I have a study from one of my sources from the Caucus Research Resource Center talking about how, or it was surveying the happiness between women who are employed and women who are staying at home. So, even though the results can kind of vary, sometimes it says that there's not really much of a correlation. Sometimes, in some of the places, it shows that there is somewhat correlation. Women are happier either in the workforce or happier staying at home.
Yeah.
So I think it just kind of reveals that maybe it's more of a nuanced topic, and that in certain places it works out better for women to like adhere to like gender roles or not to. So it's kind of just like where you're at and kind of what you want, maybe.
I feel like it's more like a socio, like cultural difference. I remember like seeing that I think it was in the Middle East, like only a couple of years ago that women got the right to drive, right? As if here, like for years and years, like it's not like a new thing, right? That every gender and anybody can just go and drive. So like I feel like it's just based on the culture, like you live in, right? In America specifically, we have a culture where I feel like we're maybe more progressive, and so anybody can really do anything. But like maybe in foreign countries, you know, they like still adhere to these gender roles, like women have to stay at home and women have to do this and that. And I feel like the happiness might be related to like where you're at, right? If you're in a foreign country and like a little girl grows up and she wants to be a doctor or whatever, but due to these like cultural norms, she like is not able to, I feel like she would be less happy. But then here, like, you know, if people want to be a doctor and they're able to be a doctor because of our progressive society, then like I feel like she'd be happier. But I feel like I also understand what you're saying when it's like kind of nuanced, because like obviously if you're working, you're gonna be less happy than if you're not working, right? It's just kind of like a hard thing. Going to work every day, it's like, you know, it's not like an easy thing to just go and like come back, you know? So obviously you might be a little less happier in a sense, but it's not really like a valid study, I feel like.
Yep.
Yeah. So even in today's time, do you think that it would be harder for women, like, but even in today's time, like, to fulfill their happiness, or do you think it's easier in today's time, like in the United States?
I feel like it should be a lot easier, honestly.
I feel like it should be easier because you should be able to pursue whatever you want. So if you want to adhere to gender roles, it's not too difficult to do that. But the only thing going against that is that due to our economy, right, everyone kind of has to work. You can't just like, it's hard. Like back in the day, it was kind of easy for just the traditional like nuclear family to exist, because it wouldn't be that hard to just get a job as a guy and be able to afford, you know, a house and uphold a family. But nowadays, like just one guy, it's kind of almost impossible for especially the average person to just do that. So
I feel like, but like also like there's the other thing to it is where like you know, depending on the family you're at, like these like you might get influenced by certain thoughts, right? Like maybe like in a like a traditional Southern family, for example, right? Like Tara Westover from Educated, like she was like kind of told to do certain things and not to do certain things, right? Like she was told like, oh, you have to go help your mom here, you got to go do this and that, right? And because of that, she rebelled and went on to college and became successful, right? But look how this affected her. She it wasn't like such an easy thing for her to go to college. She had to go through so many boundaries, right? Like, oh, I have to go to the doctor's office. This is so easy for me and you to just go to the doctor's office and come back. For her, it was so difficult, right? For her, it was so like difficult to grasp and understand certain things because of how she was raised, right? And I feel like that impeded her success in a way. But I just feel like as a person, depending on how strong you are, you just overcome anything. And so I feel like you just overcome that to become successful.
Yeah. Yes. And so I feel like that tarot was like about more race and like about a type of an extremist type of home. But I feel like that if you would raise like in a like normal traditional family home, like about if you said that like about you want to go work in this job later, I feel like the parents can be like about more supportive if they're not like as extremist terrorist family.
Yeah, so one of my things from the Journal of Mental Health Counseling talks about how the idea of like hypergender, which is the idea that like you go to the extreme and like strongly adhere to gender roles.
Yeah.
So of course, like educated is like an extreme, right? So it's like easy to like pick at and say like, oh, this is like obviously means that gender roles are bad or whatever. But like you could also look at it from the other way. It's just like maybe like you can learn from like her parents' mistakes and show like what is actually positive and what isn't, instead of just like looking at it from this one way and saying, oh, it's probably horrible just because she went a different direction than say like her parents did.
Yeah, for like the what's it called, hypergender?
Hypergender.
Yeah, like some like people look at it in like a negative, like also some people look at it positive, right? Like it just like for some people just make life like simpler, in the sense that like I do this job and she does this job, right? It's not like we have to like go through this and that. It's just like a set thing, and you just follow it and that's just your life, you know? It doesn't become like any like complicated thing. People just find that easier and more simple, and they're kind of used to that, depending on where they're from and where their like family believes and doesn't believe. But like one of my studies that I got was from author Kathy Young, and she got this information from the PEW Research Center, and she basically talks about a study about how they found out nationwide in America at least 40% of women are the breadwinners in their family. And this is kind of like it's like an interesting thing, because most people, they just assume that the man, if like a man's in a relationship, they just assume that he's gonna be making most of the money. He's gonna be providing for the family, right? They always say, oh yeah, like the man is supposed to be providing for the family, right? But in this case, the woman is the main breadwinner for the family, right? And the study also does include like certain things, like certain exceptions, like single mothers, where a man literally cannot provide for his family. But it's still like pretty like progressive in a way, because if you compare this to studies from like 1950s, 60s, I doubt like the number would be even like more than 5%, honestly. Yeah. And like it also refutes a claim made by, I believe it was like the Fox Business Panel, in which men saw this stat and they saw this study, and they said it's like a sign of the downfall of society, because they basically have a predetermined like thing to expect a man to be making all the money, and so when they see the study, they kind of like think like, oh, where's society going? Like, where have we went wrong? But I feel like this is kind of a wrong way of thinking, right? Because just because the woman's making more money doesn't mean anything, right? What does this mean? It means that they're literally working hard-working jobs, just like as us, right? We're basically like starting off at the same place, and just because they work a little harder doesn't mean like we're going down as society. It means we're getting more progressive. It means we're allowing women new opportunities that weren't allowed before. I feel it. How do you feel about that?
I think you can look at it from another perspective. Like, obviously I'm not an economist, but obviously saying end of the world, because now, since most people aren't able to or just don't follow gender roles because like the economy and different society, right? There's a much lower birth rate, right? And there's less people being born. So you see now most people are older now. Like back in the day, it would be like obviously like baby boomers and stuff. It's a lot of people being born. It's kind of abnormal, but still, what's more abnormal now is about how now the average person is pretty old compared to the average person being young, which you could see this could be very detrimental to society.
Yeah. So what do you want to be when you grow up?
When I grow up, I want to be a doctor.
A doctor?
Yes.
Pretty great choice, but I think you're forgetting something.
What am I forgetting?
You have certain duties to fulfill. Maybe your husband could be a doctor, but I don't know if you could do it. What about the kids? What about the kids you have? Who's gonna take care of them?
Someone.
Someone. You.
Maybe
You're their
they-
mother. You're not a doctor, man. You're not a doctor. Hey, you're gonna be a housewife. You don't have any other options. I'm sorry to tell you. Even if your husband thinks you're gonna be a doctor, he thinks you might be crazy. Alright? That's the truth of it. I'm sorry to say. Okay? Are we clear?
I guess so.
Hey, how's school going?
I got into medical school.
Medical school?
Yes.
You're still trying to be a doctor?
Yes.
Didn't I tell you you can't be a doctor? How'd you even
I
get into
don't know
medical
what to
school?
say.
You don't get... How'd you get into medical school then? Did you cheat?
No, I went to school and tried really, really hard, and then I passed all my tests. So I got into medical school by an interview, and they accepted
Who's gonna take
me.
care of your kids? Huh? Who's gonna take care of your kids?
Either the husband or
Husband's
Take
gonna
care
take
well.
care of kids. It's a stay-at-home mom, not a stay-at-home dad.